Arthur Simon Flegenheimer, this Jewish Prohibition-era mobster and bootlegger, was so successful in his line of work that some protested he even stole heaven on his deathbed. In this episode, our trek will include crime, booze, murder, hidden treasure, and salvation. Coming up on Catholic History Trek.
God bless America.
God love you. I want these to be my first words of greeting to you. They will be the concluding words on each broadcast.
I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president.
Annuncio optis gaudium magnum. Habemus Papam.
You've embarked on a Catholic History Trek.
Arthur Simon Flegenheimer was born August 6, 1901 in the Bronx to German Jewish immigrants Hermann Flegenheimer and Emma New. Within a few years, his father abandoned the family, and by the 8th grade, Arthur dropped out of school to support his mother and younger sister Helen. He worked various jobs before joining Schultz Trucking in the Bronx. Working in the slums of the Bronx, he took to crime, mostly theft, and by the time he was 17, he was arrested for burglary and imprisoned for 17 months. In 1920, he returned to Schultz Trucking, who began running alcohol from Canada into New York City at the start of Prohibition. Arthur then began associating with known criminals. Apparently, he had big plans for his life of crime, because he took on the alias Dutch Schultz, because, as he put it, Flegenheimer was too long a name to fit in the newspaper headlines. By the mid-1920s, Schultz became a bouncer at a Bronx speakeasy run by gangster Joey No. The pair soon formed a gang, opening more speakeasies around the Bronx, bootlegging for bars in New York City, and coercing rival establishments to buy from their gang. Apparently, Schultz even kidnapped and tortured a bar owner who refused to buy from them. The pair soon expanded into the Upper West Side of Manhattan, encroaching into territory run by the Irish mob boss Jack Legs Diamond. Diamond ordered a retaliatory hit on No, who was gunned down in October of 1928. Schultz then retaliated a month later by killing Diamond's close associate, the Jewish mob boss Arnold Rothstein. A few years later, Schultz's rival, Legs Diamond, was killed, as too was Vincent Cole, an enforcer for Schultz who had tried to become an equal partner and then to take over Schultz. It's said Schultz was behind the death of both mobsters. By the early 1930s, Schultz was bootlegging, running breweries, speakeasies, and illegal gambling, and engaged in gang wars. At that time, New York Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey set his sights on Schultz. In January of 1933, the federal government indicted him on charges of income tax evasion for not filing income tax returns for 1929, 1930, and 1931. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover even named Schultz public enemy number 1. After months of hiding out and apparently trying to pay back the taxes, Schultz surrendered to the authorities in November of 1934 in a deal to move his trial to upstate New York. He was tried in Syracuse, New York, which ended in a hung jury. Given that he wasn't convicted, some have speculated there was bribery involved in the outcome. So the government decided to put him on trial again, this time in Malone, New York. But in that trial, Schultz was acquitted. It said Schultz had successfully charmed the townsfolks and jurors with large charitable contributions to the community. After he was acquitted, he moved his operations to Newark, New Jersey. Even though Schultz avoided imprisonment, it came at a high cost. He lost much of his New York crime business to rival gangs while he was hiding out in 1933 and 1934. And when he went to trial, he irrevocably angered his gang by reducing their pay to fund his legal expenses. Schultz decided to take revenge on prosecutor Thomas Dewey, but the National Crime Syndicate unanimously voted it down. The National Crime Syndicate was a commission of mob bosses who occasionally met to bring some order and stability to the world of organized crime. Lucky Luciano, one of the syndicate's founders, argued a Dewey assassination would draw too much publicity and incite a massive operation by law enforcement against the mob. Schultz stormed out in the meeting, insistent he would kill Dewey. To stop this from coming to fruition, the syndicate then hired the infamous Murder Inc. to carry out a hit on Schultz. On October 23rd of 1935, Schultz, his bodyguard, Bernard Rosenkrantz, his accountant, Otto Berman, and his chief lieutenant, Abe Landau, were having dinner at the Palace Chop House restaurant in Newark, New Jersey, when 2 Murder Inc. hitmen entered the restaurant and opened fire on them. None of the 4 died at the scene and were all rushed to the hospital. Schultz had been hit in the spleen, stomach, colon, and liver. When he reached the hospital, he unexpectedly called for a Catholic priest. Prison chaplain Father Cornelius McInerney arrived to the hospital to find the infamous, mortally wounded Jewish mobster, informing him he wanted to die as a Catholic. Father McInerney baptized him and gave him the last rites. A surgery on Schultz the following morning was unsuccessful, and the priest stayed with Schultz until he died later that night. All 4 shooting victims would die within 2 days of the incident. When the public learned that Schultz had been forgiven and died in the arms of the Catholic Church, many were outraged. Newspapers opined against the reconciliation, and people protested that the murderous bootlegger and gambler had stolen heaven. Schultz was buried in Hawthorne, New York at the Gate of Heaven Catholic Cemetery. Shortly before he died, Schultz had a special airtight and waterproof safe made, into which it said he placed about $7 million in cash, bonds, and gold. He and Rosenkrantz drove to the woods outside of Phoenicia, New York, and were said to have buried the safe. Nothing of value was found when Schultz died, no cash, no investments or such, and, unlike other gangsters, he was known to live very frugally. As Lucky Luciano once described him, a guy worth a couple $1,000,000 who dressed like a pig. So people knew his millions had to be stashed somewhere, and many of his enemies began extensively searching for his fortune. The locals in Phoenicia were questioned, and different versions of the buried treasure story emerged, mostly mentioning Phoenicia and Esopus Creek, but beyond that, the details often varied. To date, the treasure is still buried somewhere in the Catskill Mountains. If you find his treasure and decide you want to donate a small portion of it to Kevin and myself, you can find us on PayPal. Or, as always, you can simply take a moment to leave a rating and subscribe to Catholic History Trek. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Thank you for listening to Catholic History Trek. You can reach us at catholichistorytrek@gmail.com.